and a bunch of others. Okay. We begin the 9th chapter of 12 chapters, Shari Yechav, trying to understand the unity and the oneness of God in creation. This is not about our relationship with God, although I do translate it in some ways. It is about the power of Creator within creation, and to be able to appreciate God's presence in the creation of the world. So, in the human condition, 5 degrees of separation. We have a mind, the highest point that gives us perspective, gives us our intelligence, gives us a view on things, that feeds, it vests itself, it's enclosed, it gives an emergence to an emotion based on perspective. So when you see something and you perceive it as wonderful, it gives you a good feeling in the heart. And of course the opposite. From the heart, emotions means the raw emotion. So just to make sure we have clarity what emotion means. Emotion is not the thought of an emotion. It's like, that's an expression of the emotion to myself. You have an emotion before it's expressed. And it's actually more powerful beyond the expression. The expression kind of limits it. So, for example, I happen to like chocolate, right? Tanya more, though. So I don't, if I don't think about chocolate, do I have an emotion for chocolate? Absolutely, I have. If I don't study Tanya, do I have an emotion towards Tanya? Absolutely. It's not expressed, but it's there. What's that based on? Well, how I view it, how I perceive it, my intelligence. It's there. Thought is only now a language that reveals, that is expresses the feeling that I had. And that feeling is a lot more powerful than the expression of the feeling. A lot more powerful in the life force that it has, and that's why from it can emerge the thought. And as we mentioned previously, why do we think what we think? So we feel what we feel. When we feel strongly about something, that's going to be what we will have thoughts about. But where it comes from in the world of emotion is the life force of the soul, as it is found there, is much more powerful. From there, it contracts into a specific form of thought in language. Now from there, that thought then expresses itself in words, in speech, and from speech into action. Those are 5 different degrees. Now, God has wisdom, chochmah batzilus. It's the beginning of everything. It's the genesis of all of creation, to the very final act of creation of simple pebble, a rock, whatever it might be. Now, in relation to God himself, wisdom, God's wisdom, not my wisdom, God's wisdom, as it is chochmah avatzilus. How is it in reference to him? Tanya explains. It's in the same quality as an action. That's how distant and removed it is. So the verse says in Tehillim, Kulam b'chochmah asisa. You have made them all with chochmah, with wisdom. So the simple meaning is, if you look into the world, you'll see divine wisdom. If you look into a leaf, you could see in the botany of the leaf great wisdom. The body even more so. What does that mean? Simply in the makings of this world, you will perceive divine wisdom. That's simple meaning. The Alter Rebbe says, well, you know, what do you mean you made them with wisdom? You intellected things through wisdom. Because from wisdom, do you make anything with your brain? No. It feeds your heart. From your heart, you think about it. From thinking, you talk about it. From talking, you act upon it, right? So it's a far cry, right? 5 degrees of separation, and very distant, the life force in my actions versus where it started and emerged in my intelligence. So really, it should be I intellected them with wisdom, not I made them. You know, making is an action. So the Alter Rebbe says, well, there's a deeper meaning over here, and that is that wisdom relative to God is the same quality as an action is relative to my wisdom. Very removed. Let's explain. I mean, distantly, infinitely removed. Let's explain. Um, God's divine intelligence, his wisdom of Atzilus, compared to an act or an action down here that it produces a pebble, a rock, a stone. Well, that action that brought about, or the fact of a stone, is a result of the Word of God. The Word of God. So it's incomparable, that stone, compared to the Word of God. The Word of God, where's that emerged from? The thoughts of God. Incomparable. Where do the thoughts come from? Divine emotions. Chesed, Gvura, and Atzilus. Infinitely removed, very much removed from. Not infinitely is right, but very much so. Removed. It's beyond any letters of thought that produces the letters of speech, which are very limited and a container for something very specific and limited. And then the divine intelligence, that's the beginning of that. Chochmah of Atzilus. Wow. So think about Chochmah, God's Chochmah in the world of Atzilus compared to a stone. Yeah, there's some wisdom in there, but compared to the divine wisdom, sure, extremely removed. Now, that divine wisdom of God compared to God himself, and this is where we have to be careful, because when we create God in our image, so then, wow, wisdom is a very lofty and great thing. Intelligence, nothing greater than intelligence. Well, God is the source of intelligence, divine intelligence, that is. Not my intelligence, obviously, too. But even he's the source of divine chochmah, divine wisdom. Yet he is infinitely removed from it. He's so infinitely removed from it, from any divine intelligence, that the divine intelligence and an action of the rock that's made in this world, the stone that's made in this world, are equal before him. They're on they're the same quality. That's how far removed God is from even Chochmah of Atzilus. That's the class today. It's a very short class. So the question is going to be that we're going to deal with tomorrow. So if that's the case, why are we comparing the distance from our wisdom to our actions, 5 degrees of separation, which, myriads of separation, when God is infinitely removed from divine wisdom and His word and action. Why would what's the comparison if there's in the end really no comparison? So we'll deal with that tomorrow. But that's the question. Where are we going with all this? To appreciate the divine wisdom and word of God, how in fact it is part of God that it is here, in what manner that it's here, that it is united with God in such a way that we can understand and appreciate the power of Creator within creation. This is, as I've mentioned before, um, this is not, this is pure physics of the universe, and therefore it's a bit of, maybe abstract, and, but bear with us. I'm going to try to bring it down to earth as much as possible that we can, gain something from it in in our daily lives. More to come. Any questions, any comments on this? I see that my mother is on. I think so. Oh, yes, my mother is on. Thank you for joining, Mal. All right, Davida, are there any questions here? We didn't even give enough time over here. Alex from the Philippines, good evening. Jeff, Lindsay, Addie. Reminder today, 12:45, I'll be giving a class. There's also 12 o'clock, Rabbi Mendy, which can join. That will be on Chabad ZK Facebook or on Zoom, 770-770-6085. All right, I don't see any questions here. Dee. Bring up the Tanya journal for those who didn't get a chance to take a look at it. Just a reminder that we will be doing, starting a week Thursday, new section in Tanya. Those who want to be able to, in a systematic way, grow in the learning, not just to listen and then try to maybe think through a thought during the day, but that you can, a booklet that I put together with highlights from the teachings, every every chapter, and marking down highlights that you have learned, and particularly how this can apply to your life. That will be from Judaism.Chabad, the epistle of tshuva, of penitence, and how we can ever reach out to do more and more closeness to God. Um, and so that is coming. So that I just put up the Tanya journal that you can get some information about it if you're interested. Go to tanyarabbi.com/Tanya journal, or on Facebook I put it up. Denise, do the garments of the soul act as a barrier and separates this further? Separates what's further? Not just sort of separate from the soul. Do the garments of the soul act as a barrier? Garments of the soul, meaning thought, speech, and action, are the revelation, are the expression of the soul. The soul is beyond what it expresses. It's not limited to what it expresses. But thought, speech, and action. Thoughts are the closest thing to the person that reflects, expresses truly where the person's at. What you know, where you, what you're thinking is where you're at. So right now, if you're, if you're here, but your mind is adrift elsewhere, so really where you are is where your mind is, where your thoughts are, and the thoughts of the person, that's where the person's found. Um, and then speech is, of course, the way we express ourselves to others, and likewise action. So I'm not clear, though, on what you mean separates this further. Can hardly hear me, my mother says. That's terrible. I hear my mom, even though she's not talking with me right now. Um, so, yeah, I'm not clear what you're making reference to. And it says, I know now that God is more than what we can understand in our human wisdom. Yes, anybody else? I know now that. Anybody else? All right. Um, I think that's it. Hold on. Just putting up here on Facebook for those who want the Zoom. Oops. I don't think. Oh, there. Okay. So you have the Zoom. For today. All right. I think that's it. Jeff, Lindsay, Addie. Um, okay. All right, folks, we will continue with this tomorrow, God willing. I just want to make note that today is Chav Ches Sivan. Today is the 28th day of the month of Sivan. Today, 80 years ago, our dear Rebbitzin, Mushka, the Rebbe's wife, they came on a 12-day journey from Portugal via France in 1941, escaping the Nazis in France um, and war-torn Europe. So today's the day of the Rebbe and Rebbetzin salvation, being saved from a Holocaust, from the war in Europe, and from the negative side and the positive side, it's the day that the Rebbe began his work here in America to transform the world on the way to the coming of Mashiach. So it's a very special day. Do an extra mitzvah. And that's it. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you. Oh, one second. I do see in the pre-lingual powers of the soul, which are shaped and influenced by all data, could you expound on all data? Well, I mean, what our minds, we perceive things, and it filters through our minds, through our brain, our intelligence, and as a result of that, it gives us a view on it, a perspective, right? That's what our intelligence is doing. So you see somebody doing something, and you have a perspective on it. First it's a very what's the word? Very um, simple in the sense that it is, is this person doing something that, very objective at first begins. It might be just a brief moment because it might become subjective right away. But we have a view on it. And that view could be because of the pattern of our brain that we've been viewing that person and what they've done till now. It could be a pattern that we've set for that person, or in general, the pattern and how I see, the cup half full or half empty. That's a perspective. So whether it's on that, let's say on a person, oh, there he goes again. Well, maybe that be a pattern. There might be a pattern in my brain, a crevice in the brain that, this is how, when I see that, that's how I perceive it. Could someone else perceive the exact same thing and come away and say, oh, wow, enlightening. Not like, there he goes again, right? Something negative. Enlightening. Interesting. You could, it's possible, right? Actually, in the Torah studies class we gave this week about Korach, right? So Korach is viewed throughout the centuries purely as just a wicked person. Comes to Rebbe and gives new insight. He had a very strong desire to be the Kohen Gadol because he wanted closeness to God. He wanted, and likewise the 250 men with him, a certain bond with God that you couldn't get unless you had that position. And that is something that motivated him, so much so that he was ready to give up his life because he knew it was a great risk. He knows Moshe Rabbeinu is Moshe Rabbeinu, but because of the great desire that he had for the experience of closeness to God, what happens? You warp things, you rationalize things in order to have what you want. And that's what he wanted, because his perspective on being the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, was like, wow, this is it. So so the Rebbe gives a whole different perspective on him. Yeah, it was an evil act, but the intent was very different. So much so that even Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses himself, says, I also want to be the Kohen Gadol. The difference is he doesn't act upon the desire that he had. And why does he want to be the Kohen Gadol? Because, whoa, that's an amazing closeness with God that you have in the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur and other times. But it was meant for me. So he desists from acting upon his desire. My point over here is that the mind can perceive things differently. That Rebbe has such a positivity that he can even see something positive and redeeming in Korach. So that's what we're talking about here when we speak about the mind. The mind has that capability. So that will feed the heart. that perspective, that understanding that you have, right, will feed the heart. By feeding the heart, it will give a certain feeling. From there, it will be, now that I feel a little more positive about this guy, I'm not going to just, you know, like back in the day, it used to be like a person would like, spit on the floor and say, ah, you should rot like Korach. You know, if you want to really curse somebody. Not that you should, but, you know, just, you know. Well, well, he did rot. I mean, you know, the ground did open up and he did get swallowed up. Not taking away that, but there is something redeeming about him. Do I only look at his actions, or can I see something redeeming and look at him in a different light? That's the brain. That's the capability of the mind. That's the Rebbe's, what he's giving us a different view of things. That's generally what Hasidus does, give us a different view about the perception and the understanding of God in our life. And the Rebbe is doing that for our understanding of Korach. I hope that was... Yes, so we are bombarded by so many messages. You're right. And those messages are shaping our perspective on how we see things. That's why we got to be, you know, a little careful. Um, we have to be a little careful on what we watch and we see, because that will give us a perspective on things. You know, the more we watch television, for example, and you know, Western kind of drama and comedy and all these things, the more we're going to think, because our mind's going to be enveloped and have a perception of life the way it is as television shows it to us. Can be careful with that. I hope that was helpful, John. Okay, I think that's it. All right, folks. See you later on if you want to join. 12:45. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zurich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Lindsay, and everyone.